3, 2. Welcome, everybody, to Cultivated Live for Thursday, September 4th. I am Jay Rosenthal. That is John Burke. These two guys are with our friends. They're our friends from MariMed, their CEO, Jon, and Chief Communications Officer, Howard. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having us on.
Great to be back.
Well, it's good to touch base with people who are near or my home state, and actually Jeremy's ancestry is from Massachusetts as well. So good to see everybody. We wanted to connect with you because there's a ton going on. We're going to hop around on a bunch of topics because we thought you'd both be good to connect with. I want to start with where we're reading lots of news from. There is a motivated governor in Pennsylvania to legalize cannabis. I think he wants to do it because they're losing money to surrounding states. He wants to do it because the state has budget holes they want to fill. I don't know which one wants to answer, but you guys made news, I think it was the end of July, about partnerships in Pennsylvania and your positioning there. Who wants to talk Pennsylvania, MariMed, Tilt, and what's going on?
Well, I can start talking about the relationship with the Tilt, and then I can let Howard talk about the adult use and what's going on with the government. But yeah, no, MariMed has been working on our strategy of expanding the brands, and this is just one way of expanding our brands into new growth states, especially one that has exciting news of the hopefully becoming the next adult use state. Going from medical to adult is a big step, but getting our brands into as many states as possible, whether it's through an MSA or a licensing agreement or ownership and running these facilities in every state, has been very slow and difficult, has cost and time to get these up and running. And when the opportunity with Tilt and their CEO, me and him were having some lunch together, and we just started talking and what they're working on, and the relationship just came into a situation where we're trying to get our products into more states. We saw this as a great opportunity to bring our brands into the state of Pennsylvania before the adult use and getting people to understand what our brands are about. And this was a great opportunity with very little upfront because we're bringing expertise and commitment to grow their business for them through our relationships with all the MSOs that we deal with in every state. We're already seeing great results in the state where we're growing their business with the introductions that we've had to get them into additional locations. And as I said, Howard can talk more about what's going on in the government, but we are very excited about that. So I'm going to leave it to Howard on that part.
Thanks, John. And it's great to see you guys, and thanks for having us on. It's always a pleasure. Great seeing you both.
You don't have to say that.
I've been media trained. Well
played.
But it is good seeing you both, and you do a great job. And truly, without blowing smoke, pun intended, it is a great show that we watch all the time. So it is cool for us to be back on. But look, we don't have a crystal ball, but we certainly are following what's happening there every day. And to John's point, we do think it is likely to be the next state. I think the governor has already put adult use into his budget. I think you're spot on. I think they've got a budget deficit. They're seeing money flow away. And I think 65% of the citizens want it. So all of that would portend it's going to happen. But there's obviously this fight going on with competing bills in their Senate and in their House, whether this is state run or more typical of another licensed state. And we certainly hope the latter is what ends up happening. But I think it's a matter of who blinks first, right? Unless you guys have more info than we do. So we're all watching and waiting, but we do think it's going to happen soon.
I'll just chime in on that question, Howard and John. I mean, both addressed to both of you. How do you plan as a business if it is the former, if it does become a state-run structure? Again, no crystal ball, but how are you thinking about these different scenarios? How do you model that, and how do you think about that internally?
Well, the fact is, we started out as a consulting company managing in many different states with many different types of setups. So I think that our organization with our management team is very well prepared. Doesn't make a difference which type of setup the state brings in. We're prepared to be ready to help make that transition, do it easy and smooth. it's no different than us walking in on September 1st and managing tilt on day one, because we know the industry, we understand medical, and we've been in medical only states. Delaware just was the last state to convert to adult use, and we're doing wonderful there, and we're excited about the opportunity to do this again in the state of Pennsylvania.
I want to shift from Pennsylvania to Massachusetts, because I think it was last summer I visited what was then the Panacea dispensary in Quincy. It's now shifted. You're going to correct me when I get it wrong, but Thrive dispensary in Quincy, same location, same everything. What brought about the sort of transition to the rebranding, and that impacts or is the same for other Panaceas in Massachusetts? Talk a little bit about that transition, the how and the why, but then also maybe sort of how you gauge the success of that over time. Is it about, same store sales over time? Like how you gauge if that's working versus sort of the same?
All right, I'll let you take the lead on this one, please.
Sure. Look, it's only a matter of when, not if, that we're talking about national brand, product brands and retail brands. And so it only made sense that we took which were a few different retail brands. We had Thrive in most of the states in which we operate, Illinois, Ohio, Delaware, Maryland. It only made sense to make a full change to get to that day where folks like you that travel from state to state recognize and have loyalty with our brands, right? So from a balance sheet perspective, it's certainly easier, cheaper for everything from signage to just the time involved in managing multiple states, multiple brands, and multiple websites and all. But from a consumer perspective, and that's much more important, longer term loyalty. And loyalty is really important to us. We've got a very robust loyalty program, accounts for the vast majority of our sales in our stores. And we know eventually that's going to be one national program. So it just made sense to get ahead of that.
Yeah. Okay. And I want to sort of drill down maybe even more specifically to that, because we're talking about the retail brand in that respect. But what is also interesting and sort of, I think, follows along with what you just said, Howard, and actually increasing the number of states are offering it in, like MariMed's portfolio of brands, from Betty's Eddies to Nature's Heritage to Bubby's Baked, which I quite love, to Vibations and In-House. Like, talk a little bit about that brand, those brands, and which categories sort of are most mission critical to you, and how they sort of cross borders. Because I remember hearing about Betty's Eddies years ago, and I just thought it was the best name. And then sort of everybody in my family, that's their go-to. But talk a bit about sort of how those brands transcend and grow. And is it the same in every market? Sort of, is the game plan the same in every market, or is our tastes and what people are asking for in Pennsylvania, for example, different than what people are asking for and want in Massachusetts? And sort of, how do you gauge that?
So look, the first thing Jon said this morning is the most critical to begin that answer. We're focused on an expand the brand strategy, and what that means is our long-term goal is to have top selling brands nationally. And we think we're well on our way, as you mentioned, and thanks for being a fan of them. Betty's Eddies, our fruit chew, is the #1 edible in its category in Maryland, Massachusetts, and Delaware, and constantly moving up the ranks in Illinois, where it was only introduced about a year and a half ago. Nature's Heritage, the flower brand, also really strong seller, and down the line. So we're really proud of what we've done in terms of innovation, quality, consistency with the brands, and the result are the sales that we experience and the continued growth of the market share across them. Long term, we have the eye on the prize. It is about expanding as deep into the existing states we can and constantly getting into new stores, while also growing through M&A and licensing, MSA relationships, if it makes sense, into new states. But that, to us, the ultimate winners here in this industry is going to be those with the strongest brands. And today we may not be the biggest player from a top line perspective, but we think we are well on our way to be the strongest player as it relates to brand portfolio.
I want to crystal ball, not necessarily MariMed per se, but what is there is a lot of wish casting towards the nation's capital. There were the president mentioned the word that he was looking at cannabis reform. What I forget what the actual words were a couple of weeks ago when he said a few weeks, and then every Thursday afternoon it seems like people are like, "This is the week," and get very excited about, I don't know, rescheduling with the stroke of a pen. I guess I'm curious what you think a timeline around that is. Is it realistic? But then actually back to Jeremy's question about how do you plan for that, or if you do. And I do see over Howard's right shoulder the 280E, which is clearly part of this. But talk about sort of what you're thinking about as it relates to what's happening in DC. And then actually, I have a follow-up question as well. But let's talk about sort of the policy questions in DC first.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start first about the policy question. I mean, Howard really will tell you that I was one of the few CEOs that are out there talking like it's never going to happen. I didn't really believe anything. Washington is just full of hot air. I do have to say I've started to change my opinion as we hear more momentum coming from the Republican Party and the president himself saying that he wants to see this rescheduled. We don't know all the details of full yet, but Howard can talk a little bit more about that. But we look at it as a very exciting time. And I think that the part that most people are paying attention to is the 280E tax going to a normal tax rate, which would really help a lot of the cannabis industry. The fact is that there's also other great opportunities that come along with it in terms of expandability and growth through real research and development, and some more leniency about the future as people become more accustomed to hearing about cannabis. And more than half the country is already in support of cannabis. So why is it taking so long? We are very hopeful that we will see something in the near future. I think that there's been a lot of chatter. I'll let Howard speak more to it. He's been sitting in one of our groups in Washington along with a couple of our other execs to be involved in the day-to-day activities. But we're very fortunate that we're preparing internally for what this would mean, which is work as usual, guys. This will only change our accounting for the tax purposes. It will help us on some of our ability to buy at better rates, because there are vendors that won't allow you to buy because you're in the Schedule 1 right now, and that they don't want to have that as a grouping that they want to have to deal with in any type of an audit or an investor looking at them. So I think rescheduling would help in research. It helps in opening up the market for us to get better pricing, which will help us work on our margins and our bottom line even more than we can do today. The 280E going away is huge for cash flow for every cannabis company. And those are the parts that get us very excited if it really can get to that next step. I'll let Howard give you a quick update on what's happening in Washington.
Yeah, well, I wish I had a lot more to say than everybody else is out there trying to say. But I think what Jon is alluding to is, we're members of the U.S. Cannabis Roundtable. I know you've had those folks on, and we're proud members of that organization. I lead the Communications Committee, and Ryan Crandall, who was supposed to be here, were it not for a corn dog gone bad last night, would be on here. And he sits on the policy committee, and we'll be in DC next week meeting with the USCR and some meetings on the Hill. Look, I think everybody is really excited about a couple of words that came out of the president's mouth almost a month ago now. Within weeks, he'll make a decision, right? I think the markets have moved on that. Anticipation, excitement have moved on that, and all that's fantastic. As Jon says, we're always been cautiously optimistic. You take a step back, and the reality is within weeks has been used against any number of topics from this administration. So, we are very bullish. We only hear good things that it should happen, but no one knows until it actually does. And the important thing is that we're operating the business under any scenario. But happy to come back on, next week after we're in DC on Wednesday, and see if we learn anything more, when we've got boots on the ground.
We'll talk to you from the Russell Senate office building.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll do a stand-up, sure.
That'd be great. I used to work in the Hart Senate office building.
Have you been on the train?
Oh, yeah. Well, oh, yeah.
Most people don't know about the train. It's sort of cool. It's like Disneyland.
Of course, yes. Disneyland with everybody wearing suits and walking real fast and talking on their phone. One thing it's hard to ignore, that one thing that's all this chatter over the past month, as Jon was saying, is the impact on stock prices of publicly traded cannabis companies, yours being one of them. I think I just checked the chart up just under 50% over the past month. Talk a little bit about sort of the impact of that. Is that momentum sustainable? And sort of how, what are the metrics to make it sustainable? Is it, free cash flow, gross margin, brand penetration, same source sales, new market operations? Like, talk a little bit about sort of the past month and sort of keeping it sustainable as things go.
Well, sustainable in any type of a market is very difficult to predict. None of us have that crystal ball. I mean, we have been doing everything that we've said we would do. The whole cannabis market took a nosedive over the last year plus. And, we've seen some recovery, which we do feel is from rescheduling. But, we did have very strong earnings in Q2 with sequential improvements across revenue, EBITDA, and margin. So we're showing people that we're doing what we said we were going to do once we got to the end of our build outs and get these operations up and running. And I think that that's part of it. The fact is, to keep it there is very difficult until the rescheduling, because when rescheduling happens, then there's going to be, as I said, more open for people to be able to A, be a vendor, and B, for the stock to be actually bought and sold, and hopefully eventually the uplisting to the big boards so that we're real stocks. Right now we're dealing with very few institutional traders. We're dealing with some family offices, and we're having very positive feedback from family offices right now that we're talking to. I think maybe some of them are running out to buy the stock, but I think what's happening is that people are really looking at the president saying, hey, he's being positive about this. This really could be rescheduled. And they're really taking a positive aspect, which is something Howard's been pushing me to do, is think about the future and being in front of people that are going to invest now and in the future. It's very difficult with the lack of institutional investors today to have one group that you can go talk to that will help affect your stock. We've been doing a very good job. Howard's a great leader in communication, and we just are concentrating on right now to maintain the value of the company through our earnings, positive cash flow, and turning things to the more positive. People didn't understand that we're more of a wholesaler than a retailer, unlike a lot of our competitors. So our margins aren't going to be as high as theirs, but they are very good margins for a CPG company, which is what we're trying to concentrate on. We're not saying that we don't like retail. Retail is just not going to be the biggest part of our operations as we keep growing, because we're getting into more distribution, licensing, and other things like that, which will help us in the overall number. But it's the goal of this company to be a leader with the brands and have people recognize our brands to help us continue our growth in the future, which will help our stock maintain levels of much better than they are today. The fact is we're still way undervalued. Our stock price is way too low for where we feel that it should be. The company's worth a lot more than the market cap today. And the fact is our assets are worth already more than what they're out there at. So I can tell you right now, we could sell one asset and more than double our market cap. So we're very excited about where we sit, because there's a lot of upside for investors that are willing to listen and believe.
Yeah, I think Jon is spot on, and thanks for the kind words, Jon. I'll give you your $50 when we get off the interview. But one point I want to piggyback on, importantly, our industry today is dominated by retail investor. You guys know that. Everybody watching this knows that, and that's terrific. And we certainly appreciate anybody that's invested $1 in this space and in us, where that dollar could go in so many different places. The future will be institutional investment, family office, et cetera. We all know that. When there's more liquidity and federal reform that allows it. So we spend an exorbitant amount of time behind the scenes speaking to those folks and telling our story and trying to scream it from the rooftops that when they're ready to come in, we do believe that we've got what they're looking for in terms of fundamentals, a really focused strategy, and a deep value entry point. And as Jon said, the feedback we get all the time is, wait a minute, something doesn't add up. Like, you guys may not have the top line of others, so we understand you don't have the visibility. But if we just look at the sum of your parts, and no investor pundit seems to do that in our space. If you to look at the real estate that we own that nobody else owns, the worth of our individual brands, and you really think about that, it dwarfs the market cap exponentially. And smart, savvy, long-term investors and institutions seem to be recognizing that. Is that lending itself at all to the volume we've seen over the last couple of weeks? We don't know that, and we'll let the market take care of itself while we focus on the business. But we do think some of those conversations, in concert with the rescheduling momentum, is having something, and the earnings that Jon alluded to, our sequential growth, is having something to do with it.
Well, we appreciate you checking in with us today. We're coming up on time, but I do want to step in. There's going to be lots of opportunities to talk again. There's going to be whatever is happening in Pennsylvania, whatever's happening in DC. Next time we're all in Massachusetts, we'll stop by as well. But we appreciate you, Jon. Appreciate you, Howard, for making time today, and look forward to connecting as things unfold in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
From your mouth. Thanks so much for having us on. It's always a pleasure.
You got it.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody.
Great to see you both.
Guys.
We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.